This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Beyond everything, beyond great produce, beyond leading a fantastic team and meeting people, I think the best thing I get to do every day is contribute to people having a good time and give people joy, hopefully.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Sometimes we don't always get off on the right foot. The path to finding your place and your career path is full of stops, starts, hurdles, decisions, both good and bad. But if you keep your eyes open and are willing to soak it all up and keep moving forward, you can end up in the most amazing scenarios. Dom Aboud is the head chef of the Union Bank in Orange, New South Wales. Dom, how are you?
Good, mate. How you doing?
Good. It's great to get you on the show. Orange is a wonderful regional town in New South Wales with an incredible food bowl. What's it like living there?
Yeah, look, it's pretty fantastic. The fact that everything seems to be 2 to 5 minutes away is a massive kick in itself. But then, the food scene and wine scene, the relationships you build with producers, all these wonderful things that really lend themselves to working in a kitchen, just make it such a massive draw card.
It's such a beautiful city, particularly this time of year. I've been to Orange sort of in autumn, and it's just quite stunning. Tell us a little bit about what it's like and what's going on in town.
Yeah, look, it's something I'd never experienced fully. I thought I'd seen an autumn having grown up, sort of in Kellyville, which was at the time when I was growing up, not as suburban as it is now. But like the colour change you get up here, a lot of people say it's one of those towns where you really get the 4 seasons, and it's so spot on. Winter's dead cold, summer's gorgeous, dry and hot, but then autumn's probably become one of my favourite times. Like the shades of red and yellow that I'm seeing through trees is something that's completely non-rivaled by anywhere else I've been.
The Union Bank has an incredible history in Mudgee. Tell us a little bit about the building and its history.
Yeah, so look, it's sort of a collective of buildings that's all become the one. We have the original Union Bank, which was I'm pretty sure the first bank in Orange, and then sort of through connection to that, we have the Schoolhouse restaurant, which is in the original Kinross site. So the Kinross Wallaroo is a pretty big school up here, and it was their original schoolhouse. But then we also have a building down the back that was originally the police stables, and we have a building out in our courtyard that was, Lolly Rodini's was there. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that one, but I've heard whispers that they sort of started off there and, similarly set up a really great restaurant in Orange and have a great legacy here. So it's a place of such, history and, value to the town that I think it's one of the big things that drew me to the venue in the first place. Was sort of like, if these walls could talk, what would they say? And, how can we let people come and, continue to experience this place?
With such incredible buildings with a strong history, does it sort of create challenges for what you want to do as a sort of a restaurant and a bar?
Yeah, look, that's, I think, been our biggest hurdle the whole entire time, has been sort of doing what we know we're capable of and what we want to do and what people want from us, which I think is our job at the end of the day, is to meet, that consumer standard and give them that great experience. But when you're doing it in a venue that's probably 70% outdoors, it does get very tricky. So, the venue layout that we had when we first started was sort of, like a staff room up the front and one private dining room and There was a little section off to the side that we didn't really use. We really, especially with COVID, had to figure out how to capitalise on all these internal spaces, especially, the weather dependency just was something that we didn't have the foresight to see how much of an issue that could be. But, the building itself is keeping us constantly moving and evolving and looking at things from different angles, which I think has been one of the best parts of the challenge. It's one thing to go, I'm going to do a menu, but it's like, how can I execute this menu for 300 to 350 people in a busy service, sitting in 8 different sections, coming out of 2 passes. It's been insane.
Well, I want to explore what you're doing there and how you pull that together, and also a bit about the producers of the region, because it's such an amazing food bowl. But take us back to when you were young. You mentioned sort of where you grow up. What sort of role did food play for you growing up?
Yeah, look, food's always been a part of my life. Even I think before I was born, my granddad had a fish and chip shop for the best part of 30 years in Parramatta. My nan, mum and uncle on my mum's side all worked at Morisset Hospital in the kitchen, and then my uncle actually went on from that to do his apprenticeship and open a restaurant. He was a pretty handy cook. So I think, before I even got into it, both sides of the family were very food driven, not to mention, dad's side is Lebanese heritage, so you can't escape food growing up around that. But I don't think it was really until sort of I hit about 8, 9 years old, which I think is when you start really noticing things, and it's when you figure out which sport you like more out of all of them. Or I'm like, I was dancing, I was playing AFL, I was doing all these things, but the one thing that I really found that I connected with was in school holidays I'd go up to my uncle's restaurant, and there was nowhere else I wanted to be. Like, I loved me nan, but I used to be at her door going like, right, can we go out to the restaurant? Can we go hang out with Mark? And that's sort of where it kicked off. I was a really, really fussy eater. But if he cooked it, I had this sort of notion that it was just going to be great and it was going to be perfect. And I think the only thing I ever spat out was a panna cotta, because I thought it was egg white, and I just flipped out. Like, I didn't want to eat eggs. And so it all kicked off around then, and Mum really encouraged it. I'm sure for her as well, me saying I wanted to cook dinner at 8, 9, 10 years old was like, oh God, yes, here you go. Take that. So there was a few go-tos, and I thought I was a whiz on the barbecue. But, I think I just really valued food more then. And Dad's best mate, being Italian, would have us around for passata days and pizza days, and I'd hang out with, his family. And so I was always just asking questions and trying to get as involved as I could. I didn't want to go play with the kids or kick the ball around. I really wanted to be where the food was, because I always saw that as like the social gathering point too. Like, that's where everyone was talking, that's where everyone was hanging out. And I just sort of recognised really early on, like that's where I wanted to be, around the food, around the people. It just sort of spiraled on from there.
You mentioned the amazing connection you had with your uncle's food of his restaurant. Is there a dish or two that you remember eating that you have fond memories of that you can share?
Yeah. There was plenty. I remember we actually did a Jewish Passover, and we're not Jewish, but he was doing matzah balls, and it was for a regular customer of his that just said, can you do a Passover meal for us? And he was a pretty smart fellow. He goes, oh yeah, how hard could it be, sort of thing. But he did an awesome matzo ball soup that I still remember just being so different and like nothing that I'd ever had before. But then, we're talking sort of late 90s, early 2000s. He did like a chicken breast in filo pastry. It was for a Mother's Day menu that I'll never forget, because I hated prawns, but he had it filled with a little king prawn mousse. And I'm going like, oh, these aren't chewy, And, back then that for me was mind blowing.
Well, tell us about your first sort of foray into working in the industry. Where did you sort of start?
Yeah, so I started at a place called Red Oak Boutique Beer Cafe. It was in Sydney. It was was pretty keen to jump into my apprenticeship from year 10, but Mum and Dad were pretty adamant that I should stay on, just because I was a massive smart ass. And Dad was, straight up like, you're going to get your head chopped if you go to a place acting like you do. And hindsight, it was probably the best thing, because that couple of years where I had my license, I'd shoot up with my uncle and he'd be going, hey, like, you shouldn't be acting like this if you're going to go get your apprenticeship. You know, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down. So, I had plenty to say and didn't mind saying it through my later years in high school. But so I started at Red Oak, and I still remember my trial shift being Melbourne Cup Day, and unbeknownst to me, that was their busiest lunch, and I just sort of swaggered in like, oh yeah, cool, this will be fun. But mind you, I had a blast. Like, everyone was stressed, and there was this high energy. And the second I walked in the kitchen, I chucked my Year 12 hospo jacket on because I'm one of the chefs now, and I just duck to water, just sort of jumped in, and I was on the chip section and doing a couple of little desserts. And we got to the end of the trial, and I was like, how'd it go? And the head chef, Chris, sort of just went, when can you start? And I was like, I can start tomorrow, but I'm also going to the US for 3 weeks instead of schoolie. So, and he was like, oh, great, over Christmas period. Probably not what he wanted to hear, but, he took me on, and we kicked off there, and it was a really fun place. All the beers were brewed by Dave, who was one of the owners. The beers were fantastic. We cooked with beer. We did these beer stations that were, 5-course degustations with matching beer. And to me, this was all, heaven and above. I was like, this is really pushing the limit, not doing it with wine. And I bought into it so fast. And, I just immersed myself in it, working all the time, loved it. And Janet and Dave, the owners, were great people. My head chef, Chris, was a fantastic bloke. And they really, really let me grow there, which I think, in a lot of kitchens, you don't get the chance. This is how you think. This is what you do. I'd come up with some dumb idea, and Chris would be like, go do it. And I'd eat it. I'd be like, oh, it tastes like shit. And he'd be like, yeah, well, now you know. So, it wasn't the fanciest place, but I was really, really given some leeway to experiment and just sort of find my feet in a professional kitchen, which was really cool.
Well, Red Oak, there aren't many people in Sydney that didn't experience Red Oak, and it was really the beginnings of that sort of craft boutique beer offering that has blossomed. What did you take from your time there?
Yeah, I think even, Dave was one of the ones that was sort of lobbying for stricter rules around craft brewers and keeping this industry niche and boutique, which was fantastic. But I'll tell you what, working for Dave and Janet, it was a small family-run business. I don't think I ever saw them just taking a day or chilling out or, directing people. They really led from the front, and as did Chris, who was the head chef the whole time I was there, and, two sous chefs I worked with. I ended up jumping into that position after my apprenticeship. But it really was a place where you just rolled your sleeves up and got it done. There was no calling someone in to fix this. Janet's dad would come in and do it, or, he'd come in and you'd be giving him a hand lifting these bloody fridges down the stairs, par magic. And, he was an older bloke. He was doing most of the lifting, but that was all part of the job. And I think that really, really set into me, if you're going to be in kitchens, there's a work ethic, there's, eventually getting into restaurant ownership itself, a lot more comes with that than just building a team and sending them on their way.
As you started to build your career, who were the people that were really influential on sort of creating a path for you?
Yep. Look, Chris was a big one for me. Just from getting me, I went through all that young kid stuff. He was very paternal in the way that he sort of helped me get to the point I needed to be where I qualified with him. I then sort of stepped away from that. I had it in my head I wanted to go do some cafe work, have a bit of a life. I missed my mates. I think, a lot of chefs that have just been slogging it for a long time have that moment. And I actually ended up in a cafe in Castle Hill, the Baron. And this bloke, Alex Major, I walked in and met him. Instantly thought, holy shit, this dude's pretty cool. And we got chatting over our first beer, and, he'd done his apprenticeship at Yarms, and I was just going, holy crap, what's this guy doing in a cafe? And we got talking about food, and I think one thing I'd never done was really eat out. I was always about working and working and working and working. I didn't realise how much you get from experiencing other restaurants and other chefs' creativity. So he sort of went, man, have you been to this place? Have you been to this place? I'd never done Golden Century. And I'm going, nah. What are these? And he's like, oh man, like, we're going here next week. We're going here next week. And, living at home with mum and dad was pretty handy then, because I just started dropping money on dinners, and I think I crammed years worth of eating into the best part of 3 months while I was there. Yeah, but it was just like we went to my first trip to Esther, LPs, my first bowl of pippies at Golden Century. I was eating, beef tendon and turnip hot pot, and I'm just going like, what? Like, this is not satay chicken, and I thought that was as good as it gets. Like, so, that was a real turning point, I think, for my love of food and eating, rather than just the working side. And then, progressing on to work with, Corey at Rockpool Bar and Grill, and having met Neil and, the team there, it was just then tenfold, like you lived and breathed it. And it wasn't just the restaurants, it was the produce you were using every day. And it all sort of progressed really nicely.
How did you get the gig at Rockpool Bar and Grill?
So, funny story. I like to say I've got a really funny story. I was still working at Red Oak at the time, and I got this message from a bloke named Glenn Dunn, and it was like, I'm a casting agent for Channel 7. We've seen your Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested in chatting about doing this show? And I went down to my head chef, Chris, and I'm like, hey, this is a scam, right? And he's like, oh, I don't know, mate. Like, it seems pretty official. Like, what do you got to lose? And in my head, I was, seeing fame and glory a little bit, and, 21 years old at the time, I was also like, bit of a body image worry. I was like, maybe this would get some girls to like me. So, you know what, bugger it, what do I have to lose? And I threw my hat in the ring, and it ended up they were looking for teams of people, and me being the cocky young bugger I was, they go, have you got anyone to help? And I was like, I don't need anyone to help, I can do it. And it was for a show where you set up your own restaurant. So, and I just sort of ran with it, and I went, worst case, they're going to tell me to bugger off. But lo and behold, I got selected to be the Sydney contestant for Team Sydney, competing against other states and teams of, up 2 to 4 people. So I ended up on this show, Restaurant Revolution. And Neil Perry was a judge. So I met Neil through that. And he was fantastic. He's just so passionate, and again, that real sort of paternal instinct in the way that he encourages. He didn't sit there and go oh mate, that's shit. It was like, oh look, that's really good. But he had some really great feedback. And John Lethlean was a judge on there, Arez Gordon, Jess Ho. So it was all these people that I was like, oh shit, this better be good. And it really had the chance to blow up in my face, I think, at 22 years old, I think I was then. But I did struggle, and I think the production crew were aware of how much I was doing. I was sort of sleeping, 1-2 hours a night while we were filming, trying to get this restaurant up and running. And one day, my food also wasn't great. It was really, really simple cafe food at best, and I was trying to push it in a premium restaurant setting that they're then wowing people with on TV. So one of the producers goes to me, I've got a mate, look, this is really not how we do things, but I can see. And they were lovely. The guys on the production team, I still speak to most of them now. And they just really hey mate, I can see you struggling. Look, I've got a friend, don't say anything. He's just going to come have a look. And, maybe you have a chat at the end of all this, and in walks this bloke, and I remember looking at him going oh yeah, he looks like a chef. And I don't what does a chef look like? But I still remember thinking, they're going, oh shit, okay. And they're going, he's got years of experience. And he goes, yeah, g'day, my name's Corey. I'm like, nice to meet you. I'm Dom. We get chatting away. And this conversation started. He's looking at the food going, that's really good, but, why do you do that? He didn't come in and tell me what to do. He was just challenging everything I was doing. And it opened up a conversation that I wasn't having with the people I worked with who were friends of mine. And I went, oh, shit. I realised a few things, and I went and sat down by the bins, which was out of the way. He goes, oh, I'm here. I run Rockpool Bar and Grill for Neil. And I think at this point we both forgot we were mic'd up, and the producers have kicked the door open Corey, you're not meant to bloody go on about this. And he's oh, shit, I thought he knew. So that's how I met Corey. And sort of at the end he goes, hey, mate, whatever happens after this, if ever you're looking for something if this doesn't go the way you want it to. Give me a buzz. So I did. Once we wrapped up filming, I actually got in contact with him because I had two blokes working for me who were awesome chefs, and they sort of, after 3 months of hard work, thought they were going back to where they were working in Castle Hill. And I was like, man, we've got this opportunity to go work in restaurants that I think we're all capable of, but like I myself didn't think I'd make it in the Haddad restaurant scene. Just after years of not doing it, I thought I'd missed that boat. I sort of had it in my head it was too late to start doing finer food. But I knew, my mate Sean and Youngsy, they were both really good blokes and both hard workers. I was like, fuck, you guys, have helped me out so much here. I've got your foot in the door of Rockpool. And I said to Corey, take them first. And he said, I've only got a couple of spots. So I said, I'll hang out for a bit and I'll get in touch with you once I've had a bit of a break. Which I did probably 6 to 8 weeks later, and he didn't have a job. And he told me I could go work at Rockpool 89, which terrified me, to be honest. I knew it was just that next step up, but it also, I was pretty aware it wasn't the sort of food I'd ever be super interested in. Like I knew what Rockpool was about. I knew how it could be, that really refined setting, or it could be just this awesome shared social dining setting as well. It's really got the potential to meet every occasion. So I just said to him, I'll wait. And a couple of weeks later, I was like, hey, do you want to do a trial? Done. And then the rest sort of went from there.
Do you have any stories of what it's like to work with Corey Costello and Neil Perry?
I got plenty of stories. Hey, look, I've said to anyone that's ever listen to what the media say or anything like that, I would drop everything tomorrow and go work for either of those blokes again. Corey really, even though he did it in a way that I never really understood as a young bloke sometimes, he instilled a passion in everybody that was willing to sort of jump on the train with him in the best produce and the best service and just looking after the customer. And I was a real boisterous, loud, sort of like being one of the, not the biggest fellas in the kitchen, but I'd throw my weight around because I think it all came back to I didn't feel confident in my cooking. And I knew all these guys, and there were apprentices there that were starting out, and I felt like I wasn't quite cooking to the standard everyone else was. So I used my voice and my presence to sort of assert my authority, especially running a team of apprentices on the larder section. And I thought that was, from what I'd seen before, the way to go. And Corey snapped me out of that. Not quickly. He had to work on it for a long time. But, I got a few bollockins about the way I was speaking to people and, that whole Gordon Ramsay era not really lending itself to actually leading people. And it took a while, but eventually it really, really sunk in. And it's something I think it's probably the best lesson I've learned is, that whole you catch more flies with honey than vinegar sort of thing. And just, if you want people to do well, lift them up and give them the platform to do it. I'm still to this day, so I'm regretful for the way I carried on sometimes there, but I was on my learning journey, and it doesn't make it any better, but it's definitely not how I run my kitchen now. So,
how did the opportunity come about in Orange?
Yeah, it was another real funny one. I feel like everything happens really quick, and I make these decisions in 2 days, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, did I think that through? But look, so working at Rockpool, I met my partner Sarah, who's now our venue manager, but she came from Orange originally, so she was living in Sydney, working at Rockpool. Natural hospitality love story, bartender wants food, chef wants booze, exchanges start happening, bartender's pretty, chef's very interested. It all sort of goes from there. I think it's a tale as old as time. But we started dating. We started visiting Orange mainly for Christmas, Easter. But there's an event up here, Food Week, Food of Orange District Week, and it's a celebration of produce and all the fantastic things that are orange. There's some really great events, and there's one called Forage where you walk through vineyards and sample food and wine at little tasting stations. So we started to come into Orange religiously for that every year, and each time I visited I was like, oh man, this place is cool. Like, just offers so much. And the wines, I was going like, oh man, like, I'm loving Charlotte. I wasn't a big wine drinker before I met Sarah. And that sort of kicked off, and I was like, fuck, this region's really producing everything. And, everyone's talking about how much it's growing. I was like, oh, it's really, really, really cool. But I was very happy with my job at Rockpool. I sort of saw myself being there forever. I didn't see anything better than that coming my way. And one day, not that we were allowed phones in the kitchen, but I got a text while I was doing a grill shift, and Sarah was in Orange doing a photo shoot for her jewellery business that she just started. So I knew she was up here with a couple of friends speaking to people, and I just get this random message saying, hey, Dom, my name's Nikki. We're reigniting the Union Bank. I've heard you might be interested in talking about a head chef position. And I think I read it like 5 times and looked at my mate next to me. And I was like, is that a job offer? And I was like, oh man, just hit him back. And the first thing I did was text her. I was like, who the bloody hell are you talking to up there? Like, I'm working at one of the best bloody restaurants. I love the team that I'm working with. It was always, fantastic people. I'm like, why would I move? Like, yes, I love Orange, but I didn't see that happening for another few years. I always sort of thought it'd be where we come to have a family and that. I was only 20, probably 26 or 26 at the time. So, but she said, this sort of just came to a conversation. What have you got to lose? Why don't you just see what they want? And I'm like, okay. And then me, like my first reaction a lot of the time is, no, crazy. But I sort of thought about it, had a beer after work and messaged him back. I said, yeah, I'd love to have a chat, thinking, a few weeks' time, we might get up to Orange. She went, cool, my husband and I will be down tomorrow. Do you want to meet at the White Rabbit? And I was like, just down from Rockpool. I was like, man, these people don't muck around. Okay. So didn't have too long to get it all under wraps. But sat down with them and had a chat, and I knew the building. I knew the history it had. I knew the special place that it sort of held within the town as well. So it was a real moment where I sort of reflected, because I can honestly admit I didn't feel ready to go and start a venue of that size and with that history, not just the physical history, but the history with the town. And, people going, that's a place they've had anniversaries or weddings or birthdays. I instantly felt it was a sort of place that needed someone to do it justice. And I was absolutely terrified, to be quite frank. But I went up to speak to Corey straight away because, anything I ever sort of pondered over or deliberated, I knew in some way he'd either have an answer or he'd help me get my head in the place where I'd figure it out myself. And I just said to him, hey, mate, look, before I even went for the interview, I told him I was going because I didn't want that to be something where I was running around behind him. Came in and he's like, how'd it go? I was like, yeah, shit. Like, I think I want to take it, but it's pretty scary. And he just sort of laughed. He's like, man, like, everything's scary. He's like, you've got a good grounding, you've got family, you've got, just go. He's like, what have you got to lose? And I even remember Neil making a remark one day saying, don't worry, mate, Rockpool's not going anywhere. Like, we'll be here if it all goes to shit. And I was like, cool. All right. Well, you know what? That actually gave me comfort because I was like, I can run off and have a stab at this and really make something of it. Or, worst case scenario, I'm working at a place I love and I come back going, oh, well, that didn't work. And I'd sort of strive to figure out how to get to that next level. But, 4 years later, it didn't happen. And yeah, here we are.
Tell us a little bit about some of the producers that you have connections with of the region. It's such an amazing food bowl. Is there one or two you can tell us about that you sort of feature on the menu?
Yeah, look, I've always had a really fun thing at UB where it's, I'll take whatever you got. And at the start, I was telling a lot of producers that, and they sort of didn't, I don't know if they didn't believe me, but I was like, bring it in and I'll buy it off you and I'll feature it on the menu and we'll get through it and I'll do my best to work the menu that way. But there was a lot of dialogue at the start, but Greg from Block 11, who's an absolute champ, came in with these koji nut pumpkins one day. And he's like, I got like 80 kilo out there. He's like, how many do you want? And I was like, yeah, I'll take them. Like, just give me all 80. They're not going to die out there. But, I've really got a great relationship with him now. Where I think he knows I'll I'm not scared to take on a product that I haven't worked with, or, you know, we will always find a nice little spot for it on our menu and highlight it. John Reynolds from out at Nashdale Fruit Co. is another bloke that just, you know, it's small scale, but everything is just so bloody nice. Like, you know, you've had some good tomatoes, but he's got these wicked little sort of yellowy black ones, lucid jam tomatoes, and he dropped them in over Easter, and they were like jammy, sweet, friggin' incredible. And he just runs in with his, you know, he's got his farmer's hat on and his gumboots and his flannel, and there's people sitting all around. He doesn't care. He's coming in with the produce, drops it off, and, you know, people love it. But that's what it is, and there's no fresher sauce than the bloke himself that's just been out picking this as a one-man team, rolling it on in and having a bit of a yarn with us too. And then I think the best one that we've struck up a really good relationship with is Farmer Doug Dagg, who's a potato farmer out of Browns Creek, which is about 10 minutes out of town, and they are the best spuds. I met him through a mate of mine up here who's a chef, and, you know, instantly I was like, oh, I love a potato scallop. Let's chuck some on. And that was about 2.5, 3 years ago, and we just have not been able to take them off since, because, you know, Doug's spuds are just fantastic, and he's an older bloke. I've never asked Doug how old he is, but I think he'd be pushing 90. And he still wheels in the spuds himself. And I'm like, Doug, come get me when you get here. I'll come pick. And he's like, no, you know, I provide the service. And he's an absolute legend. And he's always got a story. He's always up for a yarn, but he's always about the best product too. And, you know, oh, this may not be as good as this one for what you're doing. I was like, Doug, just give me what you think's best and we'll work with it. But that's not his way. It's not the Farmer Doug way. He's a champion.
Tell us a little bit about your food. You've got such a huge offering and all the different sort of rooms and buildings, but do you have a dish or two or a couple that sort of exemplifies what you're doing there?
Yeah, look, I've always tried. So many people go, what's your style or what's your influence? But I was speaking about it with a mate of mine the other week, and he goes, you know, what's wrong with just cooking yummy stuff? And I sort of laugh because that's what we do. Like I'll go through these really flirty moments with different cuisines. You know, there was one stage where I was really on the Cantonese train and I was looking into that, and I'm not a great researcher. I really struggle to read. I'll read a book, but it just doesn't sink in, and I'll have to read it 20 times to sort of figure out the recipe, whereas I'll see a video in passing on something, I'll go, oh, that looks really cool, and then I end up in this deep hole of watching videos, and then I look at my menu 3 weeks later and it's all got these Chinese influences to it. I'm like, oh, when did that happen? And then next week we're going to Italy. Like, it's really fun, but I find it's always indicative of season and produce. So it's always changing. And that's, I think, the most fun thing, you know, when tomatoes are on, we go with some of the old classics. Like, you know, the last tomato dish was with stracciatella. But we got some wicked broccoli at one stage, and we're doing that with a smoked macadamia tarator. And then the other day we were doing rice hash browns to go with a miso eggplant and beef tartare thing. Like, it does jump around a lot, but somehow it always seems to work. But it's just, I think that's my brain and my personality as well. It's a little bit unsettled and always looking for the next good thing or the next best thing. And I'm really lucky I've got a team that keep up in that sense and don't just go, this is too much, you're unsettled.
Has this move to Orange and this role that you have, has it changed you?
Oh, massively. I think my confidence, for starters, when I took this job on wasn't the strongest. I was really lucky. I actually brought a mate of mine up as my sous chef to kick off, and we'd worked at Rockpool together. He was living with me at the time, and when I told him the lease was up and that we were going to Orange, he went, cool, I'll come. You want to sue? And he was, he's a wicked chef. So having him at the start was just really good because I knew I had someone of the same, thought process and background. And if anything, he was my senior at Rockpool. So it was even good there to know that I just had someone of a really great quality. But I really then didn't have the confidence, and I sort of lent on him a lot and didn't trust my instincts and my gut. After a couple of lockdowns, Maddie moved on. And there was just this period after the second lockdown where I had to get things up and running. And I really had to to sort of show that I think more to myself that I was capable of, looking after the menu, looking after this, looking after that. And I think it's when UB sort of came into its own, because I started doing my thing instead of taking everyone's counsel. And I think, some of it was stupid because it was so much prep, or, I was staying back prepping this and it wasn't practical in the setting we were doing it. But it was the start of me really taking control and writing my menu instead of, I always used to refer to it as our menu. And that was when I just went, you're the leader, you're the one with the vision here. These guys have come to work for you because they want to be a part of that, not because they want my job, which is evident a lot of them don't. But yeah, it was the start of a bit of confidence in my cooking and exploring, but also just listening to front of house, which that constant battle that used to exist between front and back house is something I'd really like to eradicate, because I listen to our bev manager, Sarah, our venue manager, our restaurant manager, even some of our waitresses, when they're giving me feedback from customers, I used to whatever, grizzle at them, but it's really helped to find our menu to something that people want to eat. So I think now I'm a lot more conscious of we're here for the people. We're not here for egos. I'm not here to get awards. I'm not here to create this thing that everyone speaks about. I just want to cook really bloody good food and be a part of everyone's special occasion or quiet moment to themselves, whatever that be. I just want them to have a place to come, which is sort of full circle from where I was when I started this whole thing.
You've had an amazing change in yourself and creating such an amazing impact in Orange. What do you love about what you do?
I think the biggest thing I've sort of come to appreciate, especially about my job and about food in general, is it's such, and I think I touched on it at the start, it's always been a social gathering point. It's always the highlight of a special occasion or, the family occasion. Sometimes it's comfort when you're having that bowl of char kway teow on your break on Hunter Street, but it's food is there constantly, and it's something we always appreciate and always sort of involve in big personal moments. I think just that involvement in people's lives and the ability to just give people joy is something that I really realise we have a tool at our hands, and if we use it correctly, they're not going to go, oh, Dom did this, but they're always going to go, oh, remember that time we went to Union Bank and it was our anniversary, and oh man, that was so good. And but it even if it's not the food, it was just so nice to have that night with your partner for their anniversary, or and you remember Dad got up and sang this song because he was too pissed because they just kept filling up our wine. All those things that we can play a part in making memorable for people and joyous occasions. I think that's beyond everything, beyond great produce, beyond leading a fantastic team and meeting people. I think the best thing I get to do every day is contribute to people having a good time and give people joy, hopefully.
Well, Dom, it's amazing what you're doing out there, and an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
100%, mate. Thanks for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.